I'm Surya Gangadharan, and this evening we are going to focus on defense exports that are being talked about in the media and which the political leadership has made a big buzz about. As you're aware, India's exports of military hardware currently is around 8,400 crore or a little over $1 billion. The plan is to increase it to $5 billion or 35,000 crore in by 2025, which is about 3 years from now. So there are a number of measures the recent budget announced for boosting defense exports. Among them, let me just play a small graphic for you. 25% of the defense ministry's R&D budget, the research and development budget, goes for private industry. Private industry will be encouraged to design and develop military equipment. A nodal umbrella body will carry out testing and certifying of military equipment, and a list of over 2,800 items cannot be imported. So that's the some of the takeaways from the recent budget. So industry is pleased with the budget measures, and I have with me Lieutenant General Vinod Khandare. He was a military advisor in the National Security Council Secretariat until recently. And General, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Surya. A pleasure being with you.
So this target of $5 billion, we have about 3 years to reach that target. Is this feasible? Is it realistic, given that the process of defense procurement, the various reforms initiated are only now beginning to take off?
Yes, it is realistic. In fact, the target had been laid down by the Prime Minister during his first term also, and the reforms in the defense procurement or the manufacturing sector, it had actually started well before the COVID hit us. There has been a slight bit of a say slowing down because of the COVID. But I think once the Prime Minister has given a goal of $5 billion worth of exports, and which is linked to the $5 trillion economy mark for the country, we need to get our act right. And in that, it has to be a team effort. And when I'm saying team effort, let's start with the users identifying what products they want, what is it that they are importing, and is there a particular level of readiness within the country, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, whether the research projects are fructifying, and how fast can they be brought into the production and thereafter the usage. I think the maximum time that gets spent is in the delays that occur possibly in the processes and the decision making, and also the efficiency in the production sector, more so in the public sector. I think if everyone gets their act right, we should be able to reach that. But it's a tall order, I definitely agree to that. But if we can reach where we have reached from 2014, that is from just about 2000 crore worth to about 9000 crore worth, I think we should be able to come closer to that 5 billion mark.
Mhm. So what are the markets we are looking at? I presume Africa is a potential market for us.
The markets are also dependent on how a foreign policy looks at countries. The easiest for the business world would be to sell military hardware in those areas where conflict is going on. So, certain items which can be rapidly used are the arms and ammunition, communication equipment. But the big ticket items, say, for example, the light combat aircraft or helicopters or ships, they would not necessarily always be employed in the current conflict zones. So there are countries which want to change their inventory where the big ticket items would be there. There would be some countries which would be wanting to achieve the deterrence level where these missiles would possibly come into play. There are countries which are struggling in the maritime domain to control the piracy. There, these fast attack crafts, offshore patrol vessels would happen. So, I don't think we should be looking at any particular continent as such, but there is a wide market available, and each of these segments have to be touched, starting from the lowest possible technology level of, say, a hand grenade, to the highest level where we are talking about missiles and fighter aircrafts.
And what about Asia? Is Asia, we've recently sold the BrahMos missile for the first time to the Philippines. Is Asia then a potential market?
Yes, Asia definitely, the Southeast Asian countries definitely is a potential market. Actually, Surya, what happens is there are countries which have the capacity to buy. There are countries who have the willingness to take the defense line of credit, and there are countries which possibly look at grants. So we have a mixed bouquet. When we have to increase the defense exports, we have to look at all these three. And then there are ways and measures of encouraging this, whether you empower your defense attaches, you sensitize the ambassadors, you deploy your training teams, which can definitely convey what kind of arms and equipment you use, which would be suitable to them. So, whether these are Asian countries, whether these are African countries, and then there is a private sector giving components for the bigger products which are being assembled elsewhere in the world. So even that is a segment. So while we only focus on, say, BrahMos for Philippines, that's one big ticket definitely, but there are many more smaller components which add to the defense exports.
And when we look at, you mentioned the LCA. It's currently in Singapore. Apparently, Hindustan Aeronautics is also pitching for a potential Malaysian order. Now, when the LCA has yet to enter the Indian Air Force in sufficient numbers, is this the right time to go about pitching for exporting this aircraft?
Definitely, Surya. You know what? Every nation which wants Indian equipment, they want an assurance that it is already introduced into the Indian Armed Forces. Now, more often than not, you hear the manufacturer saying that, look, I'm going to take this much time. If we really have to get into serious business of exports and where the timelines have to be compressed, I think it's high time that the industry also starts looking at more than one shift. There are certain places where I've seen two shifts are running. But when you're looking at an economic race, there's nothing wrong in looking at three shifts and compressing the timelines. And also, please remember, when we compress the timelines, you're still within that technology curve where you'll be able to sell your stuff. But if you extend the timelines because your production is going out at a one shift per day, then by the time you are delivering the last lot or the second lot, you're already out of the technology curve. And somebody else will jump in and say, look, I'm going to give you something. And then there are the inflationary costs, there are the cost overruns, the delays also bring in inflationary pricing. I think what we need to do is to compress timelines, even if we have to go for faster production. And by doing that, we will meet our own requirement as well as the defense export, whether it is Malaysia or any other country for that matter.
You really think agencies like maybe the DRDO, Hindustan Aeronautics, so many others, are they really up to this challenge? What is being done to ensure they're able to, raise the level of uh, their ability to work, research, produce outcomes?
Uh, the DRDO, the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, the shipyards, the ordnance factory boards, the various DPSUs that we have, these are the most important stakeholders, and that is in the public sector. DRDO in particular is important because of the sensitive kind of research that they have to do. I think one of the issues which was always said was that they need uh, continuity in leadership. You look
Yeah.
at the chairman, he's been given extension, so there is a continuity which the government has given him. There is a lot of sensitization that is required for improving the output of the laboratories. So I think that there again the government has focused correctly to maybe lead them ahead and get them to produce much more. At least the research part they must do much more. and they have to do it on a faster timeline. The second part is about the HL. Yes, they need to again get their act right and speed up. Speeding up is what they have to do. And one of the things which I told you is more shifts. So even if the assembly line is one or less, maybe two or one in whichever manner, they have to use that assembly line all 24 hours. Same is the case with the ordnance factory and the DPSUs. If they were not there up till now, there's no reason for them not to be there for the future.
In fact, since you mentioned that, we are rather late in this game, isn't it? We could have done it 30 years ago.
In fact, we got a lead right from the time we became independent in
Yeah.
1947. All the ordnance factories were here. Pakistan didn't have a single ordnance factory. So
Yeah.
we had the setup, and then we expanded it further. So the British left us with the entire setup of ordnance factories. Thereafter, we didn't stop there. We went in for the DPSUs. We went in for a number of PSUs. Unfortunately, what happened was the kind of work culture that got set in there is not commercially competitive globally or even regionally for that matter. So it's maybe if you say that we are a little late, maybe it's a little late in identifying where the problem is lying. But otherwise, the assets were always with us. There was
Yeah.
assurance from the government. There was a kind of patronage from the government. You look at the public-private sector comparison, and you realize that the cost to the country is much higher when it comes to the public sector as related to the private sector. So maybe we are late in identifying that this is the sector which needs a push, which needs leadership, which needs setting of goals and accountability. That may be the reason, but otherwise, assets wise, I don't think we had ever a problem.
Who would you say are our main, are our competitors here? I mean, I know I'm not even looking at the Western companies, European or the US, but otherwise, there are a lot of middle level producers. Even Pakistan, I think, does a better job than us.
Yes, Pakistan went in for establishing these ordnance factories, 14 of them, and then they possibly learned from us also, and they had the advantage of a lot of funding, a lot of technology coming from the West. They were to a large extent patronized by the Americans, and a lot of technology came to them, a lot of funding also came to them for various reasons, for geopolitical and geostrategic reasons, that they became the preferred partner. We went in for some kind of a socialist model where we were quite content the way we were doing, which is obviously not going to stand us in good state. But
Yeah.
who are the competitors? Currently, we may be saying that we are among the first 25, or maybe our ranking is 23rd in leading exporters of defense products. That doesn't bode well of a country of our size. We have to pick and choose our competitors, and you really touched this point very correctly. Whenever we've been speaking to people from the DPSUs or from the ordnance factories, we've been telling them, whom are you competing against? Don't show us what you did in the last quarter or last year. That's not standing you in global competition. Tell us what has China done or what has Pakistan done in the last quarter or in the last year, and where have you pitched yourself? So choosing the right kind of a competitor will get the best out of the country. I think there we need to do much better. Otherwise, uh, we can say that okay, this percentage wise we've done this, the amount we have done is much better, but the performance and per capita, you look at the DPSUs and the Ordnance Factory Board, their output for exports is just 2% of their revenue. So is that good enough? It's definitely not good enough. If they are going to talk in terms of say 1,000 crore or 2,000 crore worth of exports, which is their contribution to run the ordnance factories, the government pitches in about 13 to 14,000 crores per year. So I
Yeah.
think that's what has to be realistically looked at.
So is it your view that the push should be more towards the private sector, gradually building up capabilities and capacities there?
In any case, private sector is a major contributor to our exports today, and They have done that mostly in the global market. They have been giving components to even those countries which are well ahead of us in the defense production and exports. You look at there are many companies here in India which are manufacturing components which are taken away by United States or by Israel or by France, and then they assemble all that, and thereafter we are buying the same thing at a very hefty price.
Yeah.
So if the components can be manufactured here at a reasonable price, I think we'll have to be more liberal toward the private sector and say, okay, the licensing part will have to be simplified. Like I know of a particular few companies which manufacture uh, the lowest technology, if I'm going to say, is the small arms. So they manufacture parts which are sent to the countries I mentioned, then they assemble them and then they sell them back to various countries. So let's go in for liberalizing the kind of licensing. And when I'm saying liberalizing, it really hurts or pinches a private player. He has to spend a long time having applied. While we are going ahead with speeding up the processes, much more is needed.
Mhm. So, say 5 years down the line, how would you see the Indian defense ecosystem? Whether in terms of manufacturing or exports, what is it that you would envisage?
Because the private sector and public sector now both are competing fiercely because there is a goal given by the Prime Minister, and this kind of a firmness of the political will has to be exerted, then these 5 years can be quite productive. You see the kind of focus that the government has given. One is the manufacturing part, the second is getting to the market. Now, earlier, what used to happen is uh, we expected people to come to us and ask us, what do you have to give? Now you have the ambassadors and the high commissioners of our IFS lot who are quite sensitive. They know that they have to deliver by promoting the defense exports. They have been now actively engaged. And the moment the ambassador and the high commissioner are focused on that, the defense attaches are also focused. The
Mm.
defense attaches did not have the kind of monetary support earlier. Now, the government has given them kind of monetary support to organize events and promote what we have. There is one thing more which, in the next 5 years, if we are able to do, we deploy more number of training teams abroad, because the training team is the one which will actually explain how a particular Indian equipment is better than the equipment which they are buying from other countries. Unless we get our people on ground, I don't think the defense attaches and the ambassadors will be able to fill up this gap, because the training team is dealing with the practitioner in that particular country who's going to hold that equipment or utilize that equipment. I think one good way would be to promote the training teams also, and get in more and more of those friendly foreign countries or the uh, customers to come and visit our establishments. And when they visit our establishments, let's better be globally, appearance wise and productivity wise, something which attracts them. There have been instances where some foreign delegations have come and they were quite disgusted visiting the production facilities, and they went and immediately said, no, no, we are going to go to some other country. And there are many a country which are ready to provide these facilities, whether it's China, whether it's Turkey, whether it's the East European countries. The West is always there. So I think we, in the next 5 years, if we have to do it, each one will have to limber up. That is, starting from the person who's onto a lathe machine or filling ammunition or filling propellant, right from there to the person who's taking the decision.
So, last question. I noticed that some of these credit lines were given to certain countries, for buying Indian military equipment. They remain unutilized. Bangladesh, for instance, they haven't bought anything, and there is some buzz in the media about Bangladesh looking at, the Typhoon aircraft in Europe for its air force. I mean, I presume the neighborhood is a major focus of our export push.
Yes, the government was actually looking at the neighborhood very seriously right from the time it came into place. And it's not only about defense production, but other engagements also. And when you mention specifically Bangladesh, I want to tell you Bangladesh, a large portion of its inventory is now based on China. But
Mm.
last couple of years, I would say, they seem to be diversifying their inventory, whether they have to get something from Europe, whether they have to get something from Turkey. So they are diversifying. So to that extent, they are looking at Typhoon, they are looking at Rafale, they are looking at any kind of aircraft or any equipment which will diversify. I think very intelligently they are doing it. Someone can adversely comment and say that you'll have a large inventory of diverse kind of countries of origin, which
Yeah.
means the logistical part will become much more difficult. That is a counter argument to that. But why have we not been able to do? I already told you that we have to get things right. Now the lines of credit, there's no one single reason as to why they are lying unutilized or underutilized. My personal experience has been that we promise them a line of credit, but then to get them to accept a plain paper or tick box approach will not succeed. You have to do much more understanding the sensitivities and the way those governments function. At times, everything over the table is also not functional.
Yeah. Mhm. So lots of issues there. General Khandare, we are completely out of time, but it's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much, sir, and uh, great perspective. I only hope that we are able to reach that $5 billion target in the next 3 years. Thanks again very much.
Thank you, Surya. We also hope, pray, and we will also put our shoulder to the wheel to ensure that the country moves faster than what we have planned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And for all of you out there who've been following this discussion, keep coming to us with your comments, observations, and questions. We welcome them. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and the others. Thank you very much. Good night.